Hello friends! Welcome to episode 1 of my series on interning in Japan. So disclaimer, this is only based on my experience as a design intern in Tokyo and does definitely not apply to every type of internship you can get in Japan, and definitely I'm not sure if it applies outside the field of design. But nevertheless, I'd like to share with you my experiences on what it was like to be an intern in Japan, how I got my internships, what I learned, and so forth. Today's episode is about how I got my internships. So I studied information design, and between our 3rd and 4th years at university, it was compulsory to do an internship. However, I did not want to sacrifice my precious summer and winter holidays away from my parents. So my parents lived in Japan at the time. And the thought just kind of crossed my mind, what if I was able to do my internships in Tokyo? And at the time, I was really not good at Japanese. It's actually embarrassing looking back at my emails that I sent out. I'm so embarrassed to say this, guys, but like the title of the subject of the email was like, 外人のインターンシップできますか? Which is so horrible. Like, first of all, you don't say 外人, it's 外国人. And then, like, インターンシップができますか is really straightforward, and like, that is not how you start an email. Do not follow what I did. So it was a really big challenge. I was so scared. Like, I would have nightmares about not being able to communicate, and firstly, I tried to apply to English companies. So that would be Geometry Global, which is a branding agency, and also Wyden and Kennedy in Tokyo. So I applied to them and was not accepted after some interviews, and I thought, oh, well, let's try something else. Essentially, the process I went through for applying for internships was I bought one of these books, and this is a yearly publication that they publish in Japan. This was the 2014 one. That gives you a better date range, and it's just called Graphic Design 2014, and every page you can actually see I had an interview with this guy. I wrote the time here. So every page, oh my gosh, I have to tell you about this interview, super embarrassing. Every page shows a designer's profile and a little bit about their work and their contact details and so forth. I wrote in this book everybody that I contacted. This is actually another place I entered at Compound, but I'll get to that soon. Anywho, Melons, so I bought this book and I emailed every single person that looked interesting. If it was something like animation, which I'm not interested in, I ignored it. But, graphic design, branding, packaging, I contacted them all. So I think I sent about over 100 emails out, and I tried to customize them as well, based on what type of work the company does. I attached my CV, so I made a portfolio first, which I translated into Japanese, and I made a CV, not a Japanese style CV. So Japanese style CVs and Western CVs are different in format. So if you are seriously considering an internship in Japan, do set up a Japanese CV. That would be very helpful. So I just did my own thing and just translated my English CV into Japanese. Anyway, so I sent out 100 emails, let's say on average. I received about 80 responses. 30 of them were yes, and then I got 10 interviews. These are just average numbers. And out of those 10 interviews, I got 4 internships, if you count one of them that was 1 day. So let's say 3. Firstly, it's not very Japanese to just contact a company directly. Usually people go through recruitment agencies, and there's a specific time of the year where people can apply to company. Looking for an internship, I just emailed everybody, and I'm really, really lucky that people actually responded positively. Some people just ignored it. Some people were like, oh, you're too good for us. You should try a bigger company, which is Japanese for saying you suck. Also, I did this process 3 times in the span of 2.5 years. So obviously the first time I applied for internships, I had a terrible portfolio. Most of my work was from 2nd and 3rd year, not 3rd and 4th year, and I pity the people who had to look at that, and they were so nice to me. So let me tell you a bit about the interviews. Those were tough. So the very, very, very first interview I had in Japan was at a company that shall not be named. And really nice guy, you know, cute little studio. I brought some of my sketchbooks, my photographs, my portfolio. I walked in and I totally forgot the guy's name. So in Japanese, you can't just say like, sir, you have to know their name. And I had to ask him halfway through the interview what his name was, which is super embarrassing. And the whole thing was just really awkward. And the cherry on the cake is, at the end of the interview, I walked to the door. Like, it's a little studio so that you take off your shoes. It kind of looks like someone's house. Took off my shoes. So I walked to the door to put my shoes back on. And as I bent down, my pants ripped. And it was like, and it was really loud. And everybody in the studio heard it. And everybody pretended nothing happened. It was super embarrassing. Oh my goodness. So I walked out of there and obviously I had to go buy new pants. Just like walked straight into Harajuku and bought another pair of pants. The interview did not go well, forgot the guy's name, ripped my pants. So needless to say, I did not score an internship at that place. So I'm not going to talk about every single interview I took because I had quite a few over the span of a few years, but people really do ask strange questions. And what I found really odd was that people consider diplomats to be really, really fancy, like royalty, and that is not the case. And whenever people hear that my dad is a diplomat, they're like, oh, okay, royalty. And I found that really, interestingly, affected the way that potential employers saw me. And the one person asked me, they're like, oh, so you're like a diplomat's princess, so has anybody ever yelled at you? I'm like, yes, people have yelled at me. They're like, oh, okay, good, because we yell at each other here, and we just want to know that you're okay with that. It's like, okay, thanks for the preparation. Like, that's... I mean, I appreciate him being honest, but that was a little weird. I think the thing people emphasized the most was the late working hours. And they told me to be really cautious that, you know, Japanese culture is working really, really long hours and you might not even be able to catch the last train at 11:30 p.m. But that company was quite far from where I lived in Tokyo. And I would have interned there in winter, which meant I had to walk a long way in the snow and the cold, and I don't do really good with cold. So I just apologized to them and I said, I'm sorry, you know, given the circumstances, I don't think it would be appropriate for me to work there. That's the same company that told me like, oh, you're a princess, you wouldn't want to be yelled at, would you? So that one kind of fell through the cracks. But yeah, the other 3-4 places I worked at were amazing. And the best memories I have are Bonenkai. So Bonenkai is the end of year party at a company, and it's such an excellent networking event. And the one company I worked at in, what's the place's name? Yoyogi Uehara? Yoyogi Koen? Somewhere in Yoyogi, I forget. They had the craziest Bonenkais with these like themes, and they just invited everyone from the creative industry, and I got to meet so many cool people. So Murakami Takeshi is a really famous Japanese artist. He's famous internationally. And I got to meet one of his managers. And I also got to meet the manager of the band, who are those girls that Baby Metal. It was super embarrassing actually. So this guy asked me like, hey, what do you think of Baby Metal? I was like, they're interesting, but definitely not my type of music. And he was like, oh, I'm their manager. I'm like, oh, haha, sumimasen. Awkward. What was the other one? Oh yeah, of course, One Piece. I got to work on projects for One Piece, which I'll get into in another episode. All in all, I learned so much, and interning in Japan was a very eye-opening experience. I bought quite a few of these graphic design manuals. I contacted every single person by email, and I did so many interviews. Some of them went really badly, some of them went really well. And then I did a few internships, and that is that. So a bit of a unorthodox method to go about it, but that's what worked for me. And I hope you guys enjoy the next episode where I'll be going into details more about what the internships were actually like. So see you guys then. Bye!